Okay, I'll get started here. Good evening, and thank you for joining me. I'm Harold Putman, an AEM developer and architect with Lexmark, based out of Lexington, Kentucky. And I've been working on AEM in a single instance of AEM at Lexmark since version 5.6 back in 2013. This is a story about how we are using the AEM sites to automate the creation of printed product brochures. Software development can be an adventure. Our story this evening will follow a common literary form known as the hero's journey. This framework is found in many familiar stories from Homer's The Odyssey to Moby Dick, The Hobbit, and Harry Potter. Stay with me as we follow a call into the unknown, overcome obstacles, and emerge triumphant, having been transformed in the process. I'll trace our software story through the plots of two popular movies, Star Wars and Disney's Vaiana, whom we know in the US as Moana. Every hero's story begins with ordinary life. As Star Wars begins, Luke Skywalker is working on a farm for his Uncle Owen. Vaiana is an island girl just trying to be the perfect daughter. For Lexmark, ordinary life is selling printers. These are traditional hardware products, and a necessary part of the sales process is a printed data sheet summarizing our product features and technical specs. We create these for almost 100 new products each year in 30 languages and 59 locales. They're manually authored in InDesign, and they're tedious and expensive to create. But despite our investment, they have very little impact on sales. Here's what a typical brochure contains. Page 1 has a product image, an environmental image to set the mood, and icons to highlight key features, and some legal disclaimers. Page 2 has the marketing pitch, some colorful images for decoration, and legal footnotes. Page 3 has a diagram showing the product dimensions and available accessories. And page 4 has the technical specifications and a table with footnotes, legal disclaimers, and a copyright statement. These are created and maintained in InDesign for each language and locale, and then delivered as PDF files, ready to print on glossy paper by our field sales teams. There are three major problems with brochures and their status quo. Every local market wants their brochure to look a little different. They want the people in the images to look more like the local culture, or they might want to emphasize different product features. Translations change the length of the text in each language, and because geographies review the final brochure, they often request changes to make the words flow better in the visual space of the brochure. This means costly manual layout changes. And finally, the product specs can change as the product is being developed. Each change must be carefully updated across all languages and brochures. There must be a better way. And every hero's journey starts with a call to adventure. In Star Wars, Luke Skywalker hears the distress call of Princess Leia. Vaiana's people are facing a food shortage, and she believes there are more fish beyond the reef. At Lexmark, our call to adventure came from AEM sites. We believe that Adobe Experience Manager and the capabilities we're using on our public and partner websites could solve these issues. First of all, AEM is already integrated with our product information management system, so it has up-to-the-minute dynamic access to our product specifications. Next, we have a mature translation process in place for web pages. We use a translation connector inside AEM that can extract the text, send it out for translation and review, and can reintegrate the translated text. We don't worry about translations breaking layout on HTML pages because we know that HTML can easily reflow the text. And finally, our AEM development team is embedded in marketing, so this won't require us to justify funding for a new IT project. Maybe we could make this happen. But every hero faces immediate obstacles, something that makes them refuse the call to adventure. Sometimes the hero is blocked by external things like Vaiana, whose father had forbidden her to go beyond the reef. Other times, the refusal comes from within, like Luke Skywalker, who did not want to go with Obi-Wan Kenobi because he had too much work to do on the farm. At Lexmark, we also had reasons to not pursue this adventure. Could we really create print-worthy documents out of HTML? Anyone who has printed a web page would doubt it. And if we could, does AEM have the ability to create the type of PDF files we need? AEM has built-in PDF rewriter, but it doesn't have the kind of flexibility we need. The people who create these print brochures have never used AEM before. Would they be willing to get familiar with the AEM authoring environment? I'll note at this point that all of our content is still being done in the classic UI. Would reviewers be willing to give up pixel-level control of the final printed documents? If you've worked with the print designers, you know that even the most subtle inconsistencies can make a document look unprofessional. Maybe this was too much to take on. At this point in our story, our hero meets a mentor, someone who gives them guidance or supernatural tools to aid them on their journey. Luke met Ben Kenobi, who gave him his father's lightsaber. Vaiana's grandmother awakens her mystical connection with the ocean. These give the hero what he or she needs to overcome their doubts and begin their adventure. Sprint Zero is what we call the phase of the project where we met our mentors. First, our design team created a prototype of a universal simplified brochure layout that would work in any culture. Their new minimal design eliminated ornamental pictures and design elements that wouldn't work in HTML. Our front-end developers experimented with ways to create PDF from HTML and found promising results with a tool called Prints. Prints builds on standard CSS and adds support for things that are unique to print media, like footnotes at the bottom of the page. We had recently upgraded to AEM 6.4, and our Java developers began experimenting with structured content fragments. Armed with these encouraging tools and first steps, we began our adventure. Once the hero starts this journey, there's no turning back. Luke finds that Imperial soldiers had murdered his aunt and uncle, so he agrees to go to Alderaan with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Vaiana took her pet chicken and sailed out beyond the reef. We committed to implementing this before an upcoming product announcement. There was no turning back, so we proposed a simplified process. Our goal was to eliminate potential for late changes and to automate as much as possible. We start by creating a master document at our headquarters in the US. This is an original from which we create documents for each global region. Here we can introduce changes that apply to an entire region like Europe, Asia Pacific, or Latin America. These regional masters are reviewed by marketing coordinators in each global region, after which they are sent out for translation. During the translation process, a Lexmark reviewer in each country checks the translation content for accuracy and tone. They are only reviewing the words at this point. Once translations are complete and checked into country, the final brochures are generated and published. Notice that we remove the possibility for the in-country reviewers to give feedback on the layout and visual design of the brochure. That's the business view, but what you and I care about is how do we make this happen? We started with a content fragment. And this contains all of the marketing text as well as the images that go into the brochure. This is created in AEM Author using the standard Touch UI. If you've seen this type of brochure, you know that they all follow a very similar template, so it was a natural fit for structured content fragment. Once the fragment is created, a workflow automatically generates a PDF document that lives with the content fragment in the DAM as a rendition. This workflow also regenerates the PDF anytime the fragment content is changed. A custom workflow is run to copy this content fragment into each of the global regions, which are folders in the DAM. Fun fact here, we have a homegrown service that changes the American spelling of words like color during this process. After the fragments are edited, to account for regional differences, another custom workflow is run to send an email to a headquarters reviewer. The approval state is stored in each of the content fragments. The headquarters reviewer will look at the PDF renditions of the brochures for each global region. If anything needs corrected, it can be done in the content fragments. When she is satisfied that they're correct, she'll approve the document, and an email is sent to the regional marketing coordinator. The regional coordinator also reviews the PDF rendition, and when they approve, a workflow submits the content fragment to our translation vendor. The translation connector extracts the text from the AEM fragments, and this is sent to a human translator. After translation, an in-country reviewer double-checks the text. Upon their approval, the translation package comes back to AEM, where it is reintegrated into the content fragment for each language or country. At this point, the brochure is translated and approved, and just waiting for the publish date to arrive, when it will automatically be published to the web. The system will automate the approval process, avoid manual formatting steps, and eliminate a number of second chance review opportunities where the most expensive changes were being introduced. It's much easier to follow if you see it in action. So, spoiler alert, we made it work. And I have a demo that's going to walk you through the process so that you can see this without having to watch me do a lot of typing. So it sounds like maybe people can't see the video. Let me see if I can just show this one.
In the AEM authoring environment, we create a master brochure in the North American master folder. This serves as an original from which all regional brochures are copied. I will create a content fragment and select Enterprise Brochure as the type. Next, we enter a product ID, which is a number connecting this brochure to a specific product in the Product Information Management System. Once created, we can begin entering the brochure content. We'll start with a special marketing message. Next, I will select images to be displayed on the front of the brochure, and also select icons to go and highlight the features. These go on the front page, show things like Energy Star. And I begin typing in the marketing text for the brochure. You'll notice that I can put some basic formatting, bullets for the list of the marketing features. Here I'm adding footnotes that go along with the marketing feature statements. This is the configuration diagram. I'm labeling the parts of the printer and then selecting additional features, and those features get pulled in by the Product Information Management System. And the config art also can have footnotes, so I'm entering those here. And finally, I'll enter the copyright statement, click Save, and we have created a new brochure. I will run a workflow to generate masters for all the other regions. And we'll just pop over to another region here, and you'll see in EMEA we have this brochure created. Now that I, as the author, have checked the brochures in all the other regions, I am ready to send notifications to the primary reviewer at headquarters so that they know that all the regional masters are ready for review. This sends an email with links to each of the regional masters for review. So the reviewer can pop onto that link, and what they see here is the generated PDF. This has our special marketing message, all the feature information that we entered, the footnotes, and here's the diagram of the printer. And the last page contains all the technical specifications that came from the Product Information Management System. Once the primary reviewer is happy with the brochure, she can approve it, and the regional teams will get a notification that the brochure is ready to review in each geography. Here is also where I could select which language I want to have translated. So I could check the boxes for languages that I want and choose select languages and yes. And this just tells me that after the regional person has approved this, then the translation request will be submitted. So we can also come here and set a publish date, which is the date that this will go live on AEM and be available. And that would be maybe set to correspond to the date that the product's going to be announced. So we update the publish settings. And the translation coordinator will get an email with a link that takes them right into the part of AEM where they see what needs to be translated. They can select the documents to send within the translation package, see which languages they're going to be translated in, and then click a button to send that off to the actual translation vendor. When translations are completed, they come back into AEM, the content fragments are updated, and the translated PDF files are automatically generated.
So I want to highlight some key points from the demo. First, we created a content fragment model, defining the elements that make up the brochure text. We also extend the metadata schema so that the content fragment so that it could include the state of the review processes, the languages requested for translation, which can vary by product, and a date for publication when the brochure should automatically be activated. AEM uses the content fragment model to create an authoring form right out of the box, but we customize the fragment creation wizard to connect the product information database through a product ID. This connection lets us get product names, technical specifications, and other data from the database without having to copy or paste or re-enter that information. The form lets author focus on content without worrying about layout. It essentially turns brochure creation into a data entry task instead of a design task. Some fields need basic formatting like bullets or bold italic text, and AEM generated form provides that right out of the box. But when it came to our configuration diagram, we wanted more advanced functionality. The author is entering text to match up to callouts on the diagram. We thought it would be much better if we could show the diagram with the numbers so that they can see what the text should match to. We discovered that we could extend the fragment authoring user interface, introduce new field types. We created that by building a new Sling resource type from an existing component and referring to that in the content fragment model, much like the work that Brian Williams showed earlier today. To make the PDF file, we create a page in AEM that renders the content fragment into carefully constructed HTML. Prints is a third-party tool that renders that HTML into a PDF file. Because it's important that these brochures be exactly 4 pages, we also have a process that analyzes the resulting PDF, and if it spills onto an extra page, it'll make several modifications to the CSS in order to make it fit. Our reviewers were not currently AEM authors, so we wanted to make the review process as simple as possible. We decided on an email that would link directly to a review page. This means reviewers don't have to worry about navigating their way through to the content fragment. They just click on a link. And that link brings them to a review page, which is simply a view of the PDF with a button to approve or reject the brochure. We also wanted to simplify the process of requesting languages for translation. You could use the interface for the translation connector to start a project and then add the content fragments and the desired languages. But that interface is difficult to find and difficult to use. Fortunately, there was an API we could use to automate this process through another workflow. So this review screen is just an AEM page that sets attributes on the content fragment to indicate which language translations have been requested. When we had made progress on each of these pieces, it seemed like everything was coming together. But every project and every hero's journey has an ordeal. The ordeal is the point where it looks like they have no chance to succeed. In Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi dies and Luke is stuck on the Death Star without his powerful Jedi guide. Vaiana fails in her attempt to sail past the fire monster Tekka, and she fears that she will not be able to return the heart of Te-Fiti and save her people. Remember, when we started this, we had a product announcement approaching, and by this point, we had passed the point of no return. There was not enough time left for us to go back to creating brochures the old way. It seemed like we would not make it because of colliding workflows, lost translations, and troubling footnotes. Our process was based on using custom workflows to move the content fragments through the various stages. Suddenly, we started getting invalid state exceptions at various points in the workflows. What was going on? It came from conflicts within the workflows that automatically ran on DAM assets every time they were updated or when translations came back. We found this by lots of tracing, and we solved it by setting flags to skip the conflicting workflow steps. I was working on automating the request for translation. It all went well at first, but suddenly the connector was seeing 0 estimated words and marking the fragments as no translation required. Nothing was being sent to the translation vendor. After days of trying different things, we ended up on a call with the translation vendor's development team and discovered that we had misinterpreted some details of their API in our custom workflow. A few small code changes got us past this issue. Footnotes were another challenge. Since we were pulling text for the brochure from various sources, the footnote indicators were using different styles. Some used sequential numbering, others used patterns of stars or daggers. Print PDF had support for footnotes, but we had strange combinations of symbols and layout challenges trying to fit footnote text across the bottom of multi-column pages. It took lots of trial and error and tweaking CSS, but we were able to solve this as well. Now comes the best part of the story, when the hero finally experiences victory. Luke destroys the Death Star, Vaiana restores the heart of Te-Fiti, and our victory was a print brochure created by AEM. You can see here that it contains all the elements of the previous generation brochure, but with a much simpler design, and it was much easier and less expensive to create each brochure. Here's where it would have been nice to be able to read the room. As a development team, we learned a lot on this journey. We supported our business processes with AEM workflows. We implemented custom editors for structured content fragments. We automated the translation request process. We integrated a third-party application to create PDFs from HTML. AEM gave us the ability to do all these things and to code around nearly every problem we encountered. But our challenges were not only technical. In fact, any changes you make in AEM will have implications that reach beyond the code base, and you need to plan for those. We challenged assumptions about what a brochure was, and were able to eliminate problematic elements. It helped that our senior management was sold on this idea, and we were able to use that help with acceptance. But we also learned the power of regular meetings with our stakeholders. In those meetings, we were careful to listen to stakeholder needs. We gave demos to assure them that we were making progress. And we were able to clarify and negotiate the changes we wanted to make to simplify the review process. Our heroes, having completed their adventure, returned to a world transformed by their success. Luke Skywalker is awarded in a royal ceremony and becomes a leader in the Rebel Alliance. Vaiana saves her island paradise and restores her people to their glorious past as wayfinders, navigators of the sea. Our business was transformed as well. We are now generating hundreds of print brochures from AEM with very little manual intervention. The requests for local tweaks to layout have disappeared, and brochures are guaranteed to be up to date and accurate because they're linked to our product information management system. Anytime a spec changes, all of the affected brochures are automatically regenerated. And our InDesign authors are no longer busy hand editing brochures, and they can focus on more profitable things. The development team was also transformed by this journey. Believe it or not, this was our first venture into Touch UI. We have a large investment in code for classic UI, and it's hard to justify efforts to rewrite those things in the new standard. But since this was a new project with new authors, it was a great place for us to start. We also got to explore the capabilities of structured content fragments, which let us do things we used to do with scaffolding. And we demonstrated that AEM could do more than just websites, and this opens the door for creating other forms of print media in the future. So what about your projects? Do you recognize the stages of the classic hero's journey in your work? Are you acting as a guide to help transform your clients and their businesses? What adventure is calling you? Does anyone have any questions? Looks like there's some here. Okay, so I'm going to live answer this. So how the content fragment is rendered into a PDF file. We actually render it to an HTML file, an HTML document first. And this happens on the author instance. And then we take that HTML document and we run it through a tool called Prints, which generates PDF out of that. Okay. Okay, I see a lot of custom pages and views. What has been customized in AEM Author to make this work? So we created some pages that only exist on Author that are the custom views. So the review page shows it loads that PDF into a document and has buttons that will interact with a service that's running on our AEM Author instance to update the content fragment status and trigger workflows. So, but a lot of the basic functionality of managing the content fragments was already in AEM, and that was what led us to that solution rather than just building a whole custom application to handle this. Okay, and this is a question about how we chose the PDF generation tool, and we did evaluate a lot of different ones. We've used XSLFO in the past. That's kind of tricky and quirky. We looked at some pure JavaScript solutions that would do it on the client side, but our team that worked on this really found the best results with this tool called Prints. It's an executable that we run. We just out of laziness, we run it on the author instance as well. It would be a lot better if we hosted it somewhere else, but we were under a time crunch, so that's where it ended up. But that was the tool we landed on just based on the way that it met our requirements. Along those lines, another thing that we've thought about is using something like Puppeteer to render the page to a PDF in a serverless way. And we played with that a little bit, and it has some troubles with footnotes and things too, but for now, Prints XML is working with what we need. So you're asking, we're using Prints XML, and did we face any issues with layout rendering, or could you accept the difference to the original layouts? That was one of the advantages we had. The designers were on our team as well. We have designers integrated into our development team, which is kind of unique. So we were able to collaborate with them, kind of arrive at designs that we could actually render. There were some things that we worked really hard at, like I said, the footnotes, to getting those to look correct. But we were able to get rid of elements like a lot of times they wanted full bleed on a brochure, which means you print all the way to the edge and you have a print shop cut the edges off so that the ink goes right to the edge of the brochure. And we were able to talk them out of that. And it helped that the designers were on our side, and our manager was on our side as well to help push acceptance of that through the business. So any other questions? What would you do differently with all the knowledge you've gained over this project? That's a great question. I think that we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how people would interact with this, and we had ideas about a dashboard that you'd go into and that would have all these, the status of every document, and you could see that. And we decided against that in favor of the email, just because it was simpler to implement. And I think it's just a cleaner solution. Although, from a manager's point of view, they might like to go and look and see where are all my documents and how is that progressing. We talked about that and spent probably a little bit too much time on it because we never implemented it, and no one has complained so far about that. But all in all, it was a tough project, and it had lots of challenges, but we learned a lot through it. So I think, did you have to deal with print marks and fold marks? Yeah, that's a great question. So no, we really tried, because these are low value print brochures, that they're really just used when you make a bid at a hospital or something. You're going to sell them a 500 printers. They want to know what the printer is. And this is more of a leave behind. We were able to kind of talk them into saying, hey, why not print these on a color printer in your office instead of sending them out to a print shop and having them folded and cut and done like they had been done in the past. And again, having the management support was a big help in that, because we were able to push that through. But it also saves a lot of money in the business to do that. So I don't know that I see, how do you handle page breaks and multi-page documents? We really, because of the structure of this document, there really aren't, we don't have to worry about content flowing from one page to another. The content that's on page 1 and the content on page 2, 3, and 4 are all pretty well defined. So we didn't have to worry about that. We did, like I said, have to worry about having it go to 5 pages, because we really wanted to be 2 pages front and back when we handed it to a customer. So the way we handled that is we have 2 fallback CSS files that will shrink things down to try to make them fit. And so when we generate the PDF, we look at how many pages it is. And if it's 5, we try the first fallback CSS. And if that doesn't get us down to 4 pages, then we'll try the second. If that doesn't get us down to 4 pages, then we flag it for some human intervention. But to my knowledge, we've never had to go back and hand edit one to get it 4 pages. So I don't see any more questions. But thank you all for hanging with me for a little bit and hearing a story. If you have any questions or you want to talk about this offline, definitely connect with me. I'll be around. And you all have a great evening, and see you tomorrow.